You don't think it can happen to you.
New warning about distracted driving.
It can happen to you within seconds.
Distracted driving is one of the biggest dangers on the road.
A blink of an eye.
And experts say texting while driving is the #1 distraction for drivers.
When you take your eyes off the road for just seconds, when you're driving your car, oh, yes, it can happen to you.
Light up, as if you have a choice, even if you cannot hear my voice. I'll be right beside you, dear.
See, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. When the sands of time will run out within your hourglass. He was a victim of a distracted driver, hitting the road while riding his motorcycle going 65 miles per hour. He nearly lost his life.
It's a potential deadly decision thousands of people make every single day.
Now on a crusade to help save lives and prevent someone else from becoming a victim, the creator of DistractedDriversBusted.com and now the host of this podcast, it's Howard Drescher.
Welcome to the only show that was created to help keep you alive behind the wheel. I'm your host, Howard Drescher, the creator of DistractedDriversBusted.com and now this podcast show. I created a reality TV show a while ago, and it hopefully puts perpetrators and victims together for a better understanding. Although we all know, at times, this is probably not achievable. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at DistractedDB.TV. Of course, on Facebook, it's at Distracted Drivers Busted. And of course, to listen to all the shows that we have done in the last 2.5 years at www.DistractedDB.com. Now, I've preached this preach before, and I've said it again and again and again. There are far too many hit and runs. There are far too many people not paying attention to the road. And quite honestly, it for me, it's getting more and more disturbing. But I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But I can tell you this. This is the first time I'm doing a show like this, because I have just talked with a couple of women who I think right now are probably now moved up on my elevator list as far as the toughest women around. We're going to get to those in just a few minutes. But I got to tell you that it is so hard for anyone to go through what these two women have. I received the email a couple of months ago. I'm guessing a couple of months ago. Actually, I received it on a Friday the 20th. I read it. I sat on it for about a week and a half before I contacted one of the women that we're going to have on the show today. Because I sat back and read the story. And the story to me was far, far more touching, because there is no good end to this kind of a story. But I will tell you this. It just makes you think how fast a life can change. You're driving down the road, minding your own business, and in seconds. And I've preached this before. And I'll tell you again. Drive down the road, look to the left, look to the right. 80% of the time, somebody is doing something wrong. They're distracted. They're on their cell phones. They're eating. They're drinking. They're putting makeup on, or whatever the case might be. And the sands of time in every hourglass that I've talked about, every person has that hourglass. And eventually, that hourglass is going to run out. And unfortunately, sometimes it's by somebody who's doing the right thing. Somebody else broke their hourglass. That's what happened today on this show. Somebody had their hourglass broken, and it was by somebody who was not doing the right thing. My guest today is Sharon Horn and Carol Rains. Now, Carol is the mother and the wife in this case. Sharon is the daughter. I'm going to bring them both on the air. Ladies, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, Sharon, let's start with you because I received the email from you. And first off, before we go any farther, I should let you both know that here at DistractedDriversBusted.com, we are truly sorry for what happened and who you've lost. And
Thank you so much.
And I'll tell you that you have a friend right here. You got a friend right here. And for every person that listens to this show and every person that is either on my Facebook or my Twitter, they are now your friends too, because 90% of the people that I am on with Twitter and Facebook is all involved around somebody that is either involved in it, that had lost somebody. I've even had some that had actually went ahead and was a perpetrator who saw their ways. So Sharon, let's start off with you. At one point in your life, you thought in your head, and before we get to what happened, I just want to paint a small picture here. Before the day that we're going to talk about, you felt like you were young enough to where you were good enough to be a text driving selfies and not paying attention to the road or whatever. And you felt you were good. You were really good at it, huh?
I did.
And so, and how many years were you doing this? Like you when you first got your license, you thought, okay, I got my license. I'm good. I'm cool. I can do whatever I want.
I am 35 now, and I would say I've probably been doing it for the last 6 or 7 years.
6 or 7 where you felt comfortable that you can do it.
Yep.
Okay, so you're 35 now. So how many years ago? Well, first off, let's bring me up to the date. And I think the date is, I'm looking at November 4th.
Yep.
Something happened that wasn't supposed to happen on such a special day. So walk me through that day from what you best recollect.
It was my son's 17th birthday.
Okay.
We were going to take him to the hockey game here in Wenatchee, and I was walking out of work at 4:30, and I looked down at my phone, and I had 10 missed calls from my mom and countless text messages telling me that I needed to call her right now. I stopped in my tracks and called her, and she said, "Sissy, I don't know how to tell you this, but Daddy's gone."
Mm-hmm.
And I collapsed on the floor at work, and don't remember much after that. My boss had to call and let my boyfriend know to come and pick me up because I needed to get to my mom because she lives 2.5 hours away from me. And so my boyfriend came with my kids, and I had to tell my kids that their grandpa had been killed in a car accident right in front of Grandma and Grandpa's house.
So basically your father was ready to make a right or left-hand turn into your driveway.
Left-hand turn into their driveway, yep.
And is this like on a 2-lane street, like, or one-lane type?
It's a 2-lane highway.
Okay.
And the speed limit right now is 60 miles an hour. And my dad lectured us countless times to always put our blinker on long before you're legally supposed to.
Right.
And to tap your brakes, because there's been so many times where he's almost been rear-ended. And so he was always scared that one of us were going to be hit.
Right.
He was at a stop, a complete stop, with his blinker on, waiting for oncoming traffic so he could turn into his driveway. And the female driver was driving a Ford Explorer
Mm-hmm.
and hit him at an undefined speed, a minimum of 65 miles an hour.
Wow.
And it pushed his car into the oncoming lane of traffic where he collided with another vehicle.
Oh, jeez.
The other vehicle that was involved in the accident gave a description to the troopers. She said when she seen the accident happen, she seen a white car go airborne and car parts fly everywhere.
Wow.
And my dad had a little Chevy, a white Chevy Cavalier. And by the time the entire accident was over, my dad's car was in the ditch on their side of the road where their home is.
Right.
And the troopers cannot figure out how fast she was going because she moved her vehicle after.
Well, yeah.
And then with the impact of the second vehicle. Both fortunately and unfortunately, my dad was killed instantly with the first impact. He had severe head trauma, and part of the trunk came and buckled underneath and came all the way up to the driver's seat, cut entirely through the driver's seat into my dad's back.
Oh, my goodness. So let me talk to your mom for a few minutes, if you don't mind.
Okay. No, not at all.
Carol, how you doing?
Okay.
All right. I know this is a tough day for you. And when it happened, were you home when it happened?
I was. Sorry. Actually, I spoke with John just about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He'd gotten off work.
Mm-hmm.
And our youngest son and his wife had dropped off their 2 older sons with us for the weekend. And so they were here with me, ages 8 and 5. And they wanted tacos for dinner because they knew that was Grandpa's favorites. So I had John stop and pick up stuff for tacos and kids' candy and treats for the night. And I spoke with him about that. My 8-year-old grandson, Colton, was supposed to be practicing his reading. So he and I went back to our bedroom to sit on the bed, and so he and I could practice his reading while his brother, Brody, sat out in the living room watching a movie. And so after about 4 o'clock-ish, I told Colton, I said, Grandpa should be getting here almost any time. And I got up and I looked out my bedroom window, and I saw all the cars backed up on the highway. And I was like, oh, my goodness, I didn't, I saw the flashing lights. And I said, I didn't even hear the sirens or anything. And I kept looking, and when I looked back up, I saw a white car sitting off to the side of the road in the driveway. And I was like, that kind of looks like John's car. And then I thought I saw him standing next to the car, which made sense because I'm thinking, well, if there was an accident, John would be out seeing if he could help somebody or, whatever. And so I got my shoes on, had the boys stay here in the house, and I calmly just walking up there, expecting to see John giving somebody a police statement or, something along those lines. And as I'm walking closer, I can see the damage to the car. It's so bad, I wasn't even sure it was my car or his car.
Right.
And I approached 4 staters, and traffic was backed up both directions as far as I could see. And this is, November 4th. It's a crisp autumn day here in, Natchez, Washington area. And as I walk up, I see a stater lean into the car, and he's putting a white sheet over inside the driver's seat. And I'm trying to figure out why he'd be doing that. And in my mind, I know I knew why, but I was just in such a state of shock, I was trying to process it.
Yeah.
And I turned back to the staters, and they were still talking, like I wasn't even there. And then pretty soon I just it seemed like several minutes, I'm sure it was just seconds. I just interrupted them, and I said, excuse me, can you tell me where the gentleman is that should be driving that car? And they asked me who I was, and I said, I'm the wife of the man who should be driving that car. And they just stood there and looked at me and asked me what his name was. And I told them his name was John Rains.
Mm-hmm.
And they just all stood there and they bowed their heads and didn't say anything. And I looked back at the car again, and I looked back at them, and I said, "Is he gone?" And one of the staters that was closest to me just kind of nodded his head, and I remember I collapsed, and they helped pull me up, and they set me in the back of one of their cars, and I started trying to call my son who had just left, and I couldn't get no one to answer their phone. And at one point I realized it was in the back of a cop car, and I've never been in one before, and that really freaked me out, so I had to get out of there. And then at that same point I remembered that I had my 2 grandsons at my house. And I had to get back to them before, they got scared and was wondering where Grandma was. And so I told the staters I had to get back to my house, take care of my grandsons, and to get help for me. And they didn't want me coming down by myself, but I knew if the staters walked down to my home with me, my grandkids would have been really freaked out, wondering what was going on.
Yeah.
And so I pulled myself together, walked back down to the house, and had the boys just come out and play in the yard with me while I paced around in circles in my house, trying to call somebody until I could get a hold of somebody to come and help me.
Oh, my goodness.
I finally got a hold of my daughter-in-law's brother, and he handed the phone off to my daughter-in-law, and I told her what had happened. And before I could finish my statements to let him know that, my husband had passed away, his dad had passed away, they hung up, beat it out here, because they thought that, Dad had been in an accident and I needed to get to him, and they were coming out to pick up their boys.
Right.
So I'm out in the front yard just kind of entertaining the boys until they can get here. Next thing I know, I heard this horrible sound, and I looked up, and my son's running down our driveway just screaming. And he collapses in the driveway at my feet. And so anyways, and we had to deal with that. And then so they go in the house and explain to our grandsons, what had happened. So, yeah.
All right, everybody. You're listening to the DistractedDriversBusted.com podcast, and we're talking with Carol Rains, who lost her husband, and we're talking with Sharon Horn, their daughter. It's such a tragedy, people, that things like this happen, and you can hear it in their voices. This stuff just should not happen. It's just not normal. Technology is taking over. It is just going far beyond what we do. We get in our car, and it's just like we're in our own little world. We speed up and down the road. We text and drive. We eat and drive. We shave. We read newspapers. We put our makeup on. I know I see it pretty much every day, and I know that all the people that listen to this show, they see it every day. And the end result is this. There's 2 women right now on this show lost a loved one. And for what? It's so stupid. You get in your own selfish little world, and it's got to stop. And if it doesn't stop, there'll be more people like this and more victims, and the ones that are left behind suffer. Let me ask you this. Did the driver actually stop, or did they end up moving? They drive away, and how far did they get if they drove away?
Her car was not movable. She moved it off the side of the road and got out of her vehicle.
Did she run, or did she stay there?
She stayed there.
Oh, that's amazing. Because like some people, they try to run and flee the scene, but eventually they're all going to get caught. So what was her excuse, or what was not even an excuse? What was her justification?
There's been 2 stories that we've heard. One was that she told the troopers that she was watching her temperature gauges because her car had been overheating. But what you need to understand is there's a 0.7 mile stretch of straight, unobstructed view road where she could see my dad's car for 0.7 miles. There was no cars in between them. There was no weather issues. There was no snow, no puddles. There was no reason she could not have seen him. And I cannot imagine anybody having to truly watch their temperature gauges for that many miles.
Right. Not for 6-7 miles. That's just ridiculous. And even if so, you could just pull off on the side of the road and figure out what's wrong with your car.
Right. You shouldn't, if you're having to watch your gauges that much, then you shouldn't be driving.
It's just insane. Yeah.
The other thing I'd like to point out, and actually my son David pointed this out, is if her car was truly overheating, why would she be driving 60, 65 miles an hour? If your car's overheating, you're going to be driving slower because you're not going to want it to overheat.
Did the I don't know. You guys got troopers or state troopers or you got cops or.
Well,
But-
state troopers were who came to the accident.
But did anybody like look at her phone to find out what
No.
she was doing, or you guys
Nope.
don't have laws that pertain to this, right?
We have police officers, sheriffs, and state patrol officers, and they all have different rules when it
Jeez.
comes to checking cell phones.
See, they shouldn't. They
State
should have
patrol,
one.
they should have universal. I agree. State patrol, it is not their practice to look at cell phone records unless there's an indication that cell phones were in play. And they said that they didn't have any reason to think that
Really?
her cell phone was being used.
You're kidding, right?
No.
There's a
So they
car.
did not check.
There's a car that got totally demolished. There's a young man that lost his life, and they feel there's no justification to look at their cell phones.
Correct, because she said she was watching her gauges, so that to them made it seem like that was her reasoning for not paying attention to the road.
Yeah, okay. I can see. Oh, yeah. All right. So let me ask you this. How far along are you guys in this case? Do you have, is there any kind of court date set? Is she free? Is she running around town? Or
Right
what is
now-
she doing?
My mom and I met with the state troopers last weekend to review the case. It has still not gone to the prosecuting attorney. And mind you, my dad's accident happened November 4th,
2016.
2016. It has not gone to the prosecutor yet. So when meeting with them, they showed us everything in my dad's case file and told us that there's, in their opinion, she will be receiving a ticket.
A
so
ticket?
there won't be a court, yes,
A
there will not
ticket?
be a court date. Yep.
Now, did you guys get a lawyer? I'm sure you guys got some kind, but do you get a distracted driver's lawyer, or they don't have those out where you're at?
We don't
or-
have those where we're at.
Oh, really? Whew. Man, that's tough. I don't understand that. I mean, just from listening to what you guys are talking about, all indications, and I'm not a lawyer, but I've heard enough people talk and I've seen enough of stuff. It seems like there's no way that she was checking the gauges. I just, in my mind, even if you glance down for a second, you look back up, but you have to go at that rate of speed for that amount of distance. You have to be looking down for a long period of time. And because even if you look down for 1 second, look back up, you see, okay, it's good. Okay, there's no way that you would drift far left like that and not see the person turning and you wouldn't smack into them.
No, and in Washington state laws also, sorry, Sharon, state that currently, and they're trying, there's actually legislation before our House and Senate, and they're trying to change it. But currently, basically, the only way you can be accused of distracted driving is if there's an eyewitness to it, you self-admit that you were distracted.
Okay.
But currently, that's the only two ways.
Okay, and yeah, now who's going to raise their hand or tell them, oh, you know what, I was on my phone not paying attention? Who's going to do that?
Exactly.
Well, that's so ridiculous. That's like the fines out here in California. The first offense is like $25, and the second is like $50, plus court costs, which is a joke. Honestly, ladies, I am so sorry that this has happened to you. Is there anything that you want to let our listeners know here? We got about 5 minutes left. Is there anything that you would like to bring up? Is there any way that anybody follows you guys on Facebook and Twitter or anything like let's get that out there for the listeners.
We do have a page that we've started, and I'm trying to recall the exact wording so we can find it.
Washington
shortly
State
after,
Distracted Driving or something like that?
Yeah, Washington State Distracted Driving Awareness.
Okay.
And one of the biggest things that is helping us cope with our grief is trying to prevent somebody else's family from having to do this. I have a 15-year-old daughter who, a week after her grandfather's death, began going around to her school and other driving schools in our area, asking to tell her grandpa's story,
Right.
so that the teenage drivers that are going through classes are getting, somebody else's point of view that's their age.
Do you guys have driver ed in school? Because out here in
We do.
California, they did away with that.
Yeah, we do have it in our schools.
Do you
So
think?
she's
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you off, but do you think maybe that if you guys yourselves went there personally and gave a lecture to these drivers that are learning this stuff, it would make it more of an impact on, hey, this stuff is real. It's not like put a quarter in a machine, game's over. You get to put another quarter in and you continue. That's what people
Right.
don't understand.
Yes, my daughter is the main person on this, but I'm her backup. She is going and doing sessions with the school district right now that she's in,
That is
and
so
doing
awesome.
telling her grandpa's story. She's got a lot of teachers, and the principal, the entire school district is behind her on it. Both of my kids, shortly before my dad's accident, got their permits and completed driver's ed. And for a good month and a half, neither one of them would drive. I have a horrible time driving. I know my mom does. I have a 21-year-old son that's in the service, and he has anxiety when he drives, so he's chosen not to drive at this point. My mom every day has to drive right through the accident site.
Oh, my goodness.
There are still marks on the road from the day of the accident. They, on the 21st of March, should have been celebrating their 31st anniversary together. Instead, we took balloons and flowers out to the accident site to celebrate their anniversary that way.
This is such a shame. This is not how life is supposed to go. You're listening to DistractedDriversBusted.com. I'm speaking with Carol Rains and Sharon Horn. Carol lost her husband. Sharon lost her father. And it's a blink of an eye. All right, we got about a minute and a half left. Is there anything, Carol, that you want to let our listeners know?
Just that, this is just really tragic. I worry about my grandkids and what they're going through. My 8-year-old grandson, Colton, and my 5-year-old grandson, Brody, wake up with nightmares, calling out for their grandpa. I see my own kids, what they're dealing with, their grief and their loss. And it's senseless when like you said, you drive around every day, you see somebody talking on their cell phone, and this lady may not even be talking on her cell phone. She could have nodded off at the wheel while she was driving, and we don't know, and we'll never know what she truly was doing. And that's irrelevant. Whatever she was doing was not near as important as taking away someone's life, whether it was my husband's or anybody else's.
Yeah, I am so sorry again for your loss. Sharon, is
I
there,
do-
is there
I-
any
yeah,
last
there-
minute things that you'd like to say?
I do. One of the biggest things people keep talking about is this is a young person's thing. Young people are the ones that are being accused of this the majority of the time. The woman that killed my dad was the same age as my dad. They were both 50 years old. 50 years old, my dad died way too soon.
Well, you're right on that. It's just not the millennials that are doing this, where 90% of the people think it is the millennials. I know a lot of people that do it. I drive down the road. I see them. You see them. Everybody kind of sees them and everything like that. It's just a shame that this kind of stuff has to happen. Well, Carol and Sharon, I want to appreciate you for being on our show, and let's talk about this more often, and get a chance to have you guys on our show again in the future once there's an outcome to this, because this kind of stuff shouldn't happen.
I agree.
All right, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for bringing awareness.
All right, you're listening to DistractedDriversBusted.com podcast. Again, it's hard. It's hard for anybody that doesn't go through this to understand what happened and the impact. Just listen to this show and you're going to hear the impact. Until next week, I don't want to die today. Do you? Until next week, we'll be back.